Hello everyone, Jonathan Schlack, EAS&Weather here with a severe weather update. Starting off with the Day 1 outlook, we have a slight risk for severe weather today. A slight risk for severe weather today. That covers southeastern Illinois, most of Indiana, most of Ohio, west central West Virginia, and most of Kentucky. So we have a slight for today. And we have a broad margin risk area for severe weather today that covers southeastern Colorado, northeastern New Mexico, the Texas Panhandle, the northern half of Oklahoma, southwestern Kansas, going into northern Arkansas, southeastern Missouri, most of Illinois, northeastern Iowa, far southeastern Minnesota, most of Wisconsin, the west central part of the upper peninsula of Michigan, the southern half of Michigan, northern Indiana, northern and eastern Ohio, far southern Kentucky, northern and eastern Tennessee, most of Georgia, northeastern Florida, the entirety of South Carolina, the entirety of North Carolina, the entirety of Virginia, most of West Virginia, western Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., the southern half of Maryland, and southern Delaware. Going to the tornado threat for today, we have two areas where we have a 2% chance of an isolated tornado today. We have one that covers far southeastern Minnesota, far northeastern Iowa, central and southern Wisconsin, and north central Illinois. Another area where we have a 2% chance of an isolated tornado today covers southeastern Illinois, most of Indiana, most of Ohio, west central West Virginia, and most of Kentucky. So, going to the wind threat for today, we have a 15% chance of damaging wind gusts of 58 miles per hour higher today that covers southeastern Illinois, most of Indiana, most of Ohio, west central West Virginia, and most of Kentucky. And we have a broad area where we have a 5% chance of damaging wind gusts of 58 miles per hour higher today that covers southeastern Colorado, northeastern New Mexico, the Texas Panhandle, southwestern Kansas, the northern half of Oklahoma, northern Arkansas, southeastern Missouri, most of Illinois, northeastern Iowa, far southeastern Minnesota, most of Wisconsin, the west central part of the upper peninsula of Michigan, the southern half of Michigan, and I think I mentioned most of Illinois, northern Indiana, northern and eastern Ohio, far southern Kentucky, northern and eastern Tennessee, most of Georgia, northeastern Florida, the entirety of South Carolina, the entirety of North Carolina, the entirety of Virginia, most of West Virginia, western Pennsylvania, the southern half of Maryland, Washington, D.C., and southern Delaware. Going to the hail threat for today, we have a 5% chance of hail of 1 inch in diameter or larger today that covers southeastern Colorado, northeastern New Mexico, the northern part of the Texas Panhandle, southwestern Kansas, don't make this update on me. The 5% chance of hail of 1 inch in diameter or larger today also covers northern Oklahoma, northern Arkansas, southeastern Missouri, going into most of Illinois, northeastern Iowa, far southeastern Minnesota, most of Wisconsin, the west central part of the upper peninsula of Michigan, the extreme southwestern corner of Michigan, and I think I mentioned most of Illinois, going into the entirety of Indiana, as well as most of Kentucky, far northwestern and northeastern Tennessee, most of Ohio, the western half of West Virginia, far southwestern Virginia, western North Carolina, the entirety of South Carolina, and far northeastern Georgia. So, going to the summary for today, severe thunderstorms will be possible today across parts of the Midwest and Ohio Valley, with a threat of damaging winds, isolated hail, and a tornado or two. That's today's outlook. Going over to the Day 2 outlook now. We have two areas where we have a marginal risk for severe weather tomorrow. We have one small margin risk tomorrow that covers southeastern Arizona and far southwestern New Mexico. And we have a much broader margin risk area for severe weather tomorrow that covers extreme southeastern Illinois, most of Indiana, most of Ohio, most of Kentucky, most of Tennessee, northeastern Alabama, northern and eastern Georgia, the entirety of South Carolina, the entirety of North Carolina, the entirety of Virginia, the entirety of West Virginia, Washington, D.C., the entirety of Maryland, the entirety of Delaware, the southern half of Pennsylvania, which includes my area, and the margin risk tomorrow also covers central and southern New Jersey. Now going to the tornado threat for tomorrow, the Storm Prediction Center does not have a tornado risk for tomorrow. I mean, you can't roll one out entirely, but the Storm Prediction Center does not have any tornado risk for tomorrow. Going to the wind for tomorrow, we have two areas where we have a 5% chance of damaging wind gusts of 58 miles per hour higher tomorrow. We have one area that covers southeastern Arizona and extreme southwestern New Mexico. We have a much broader area of a 5% chance of damaging wind gusts of 58 miles per hour higher tomorrow that covers extreme southeastern Illinois, most of Indiana, most of Ohio, as well as most of Kentucky, most of Tennessee, northeastern Alabama, northern and eastern Georgia, going over to all of South Carolina, all of North Carolina, all of Virginia, all of West Virginia, Washington, D.C., all of Maryland, all of Delaware, the southern half of Pennsylvania, which includes my area, and the 5% chance of damaging wind gusts of 58 miles per hour higher tomorrow also covers central and southern New Jersey. So, that's the wind threat, and the Storm Prediction here does not have a hail threat for tomorrow. So, the main threat is for isolated damaging wind gusts. Isolated tornado damaging wind gusts. So, that's tomorrow's outlook. Going to the summary for tomorrow. Scattered storm to occasionally severe storms are possible on Friday, which is tomorrow, from the Ohio-Tennessee Valley to the Atlantic coast. So, that's the outlook for both today and tomorrow. So, stay safe in the affected areas for today and tomorrow. And I will have another update tomorrow. Take care.